the recording on my side, so I can give you my recording too, and you can then decide whether you want to take this one or that one.
Awesome.
Perfect.
And hey, Nat, just before passing to you, I would like you to share a little bit more, but just to give a heads up to everyone that is watching. On 16th of April, we have the Global Azure Austria event. It's a super big event, totally virtual, and it's a community-driven event.
Yes.
It would be, if you are interested in Azure, or, well, I guess we have cloud topics, not just related to Azure, discussed.
Absolutely. If you take a look at the program, you will see developer-related topics. And I think somebody is talking about Captain, if I can remember correctly. I'm not sure, but maybe Jürgen knows more about that.
Yeah, maybe there's my face somewhere.
Cool. So yeah, if you guys would like to join, I guess, yeah, Reina,
you're all invited, definitely.
The link in the chat, but it's globalazure.at. And for the non-German speakers as me, there are tracks that you can follow just in English, so that's also good. Perfect. Thanks again, Reina. The stage is all yours.
Thank you very much. Let me share my screen. Can you please give me a quick feedback whether you see my screen properly?
Yes, all good.
Awesome. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for having me here at the Cloud Native Meetup, and I'm looking forward to a little bit more than half an hour about a topic which I have to deal a lot, and I will tell you more about that when I go through the slides. I've prepared lots and lots and lots of slides, way too many slides, so my goal is not to show you all the slides. My goal is to talk with you in the next, let's say, 40 minutes, 45 minutes, whatever will suit the topic and your questions. And we will see how many slides we will be able doing. The rest of the slides, I put them in the slide deck just for you as a reference. Maybe you can find some interesting ideas here. So the topic today, my topic today is pretty inconvenient for me, because typically I do sessions with a lot of coding. I love doing coding. I love to do code samples and things like that. But today, this will be a session just with slides. So I will talk about cloud security beyond technology, and I will talk about organizational challenges on the way to cloud native. This will be my talk, and the slides, by the way, I don't know if I mentioned that already. If I did, I will repeat myself. I already put the link in the chat, so get it from there. So what is our agenda? What will we talk about? We will talk about, first, what's the problem? I want to frame the problem. Why do I give this talk? Why do I think this is important? I would like to make a point about what zero trust has to do with the topic. We will talk about success factors for security in organizations that want to dive into cloud native. And last but not least, I would like to talk about why I think that a professional cloud environment is a key to the topic of fundamental, of really good security if you want to go into the cloud. And finally, we do a little bit of summary, Q&A. We'll see how the time goes. Let me quickly introduce myself so that you know who I am and what I do, because it's important maybe to understand what I'm doing, to understand some of the points that I want to make. I am a passionate programmer, coder, entrepreneur. I have my own company, a consulting and software architecture company here in Linz. It's called Software Architects. I work as a part-time teacher. I speak a lot at conferences. I love writing and things like that. If you want to get in contact with me, here you see my email address, my Twitter handle, and a digital CV. On the left upper side, you see the logo of one of our products. And very special, very important here in this context is the Coding Club Linz and the Coder Dojo. I am the chairman of the Coding Club Linz. I love to do that. And we run various meetups. We do conferences. like the mentioned Global Azure, and the Programming Club for Kids, Cododojo. This is what I do. And if you take a look at these two lines here, it says MVP for Azure and Developer Technologies and Microsoft Regional Director. That means not that I'm on the payroll of Microsoft, but that means that I work a lot with Microsoft and the Azure cloud. And keep that in mind when I bring examples. I'm talking a lot about Azure and the Azure cloud, not because the other cloud options are bad, but just because I know Azure quite well and the others not so well. So the examples are just with this background. Good. Let's talk about what's the problem. In the past, we typically had this organization where we had the operation guys thinking, oh yeah, let me quickly reload the slides here. And of course, something broke. Okay, there should be an image here, but it's not that important. We had the ops guys in a kind of silo here. We had the security guys in a kind of silo. We had the architects here in a silo, and in the past we had the developers here in a silo. And finally, we could also continue with management and users and so on and so on. And all these groups, they had their own things that they talk about. The ops guys think about uptime, and of course, they also love toys, they love servers, they love tools and things like that. The security guys, they think about passwords and encryption and firewalls. And did I mention firewalls? The architects, they think about microservices and smaller microservices and even more smaller microservices and Kubernetes and things like that. And the devs, I'm a dev too. I love tools, and I love to get new frameworks and things like that. Well, you might say, hey, Rainer, that's outdated because nowadays we have DevOps, and we will talk about DevOps in a second, but believe me, and this is the reason why I suggested this talk, this is not the past. This is the reality in most of the organizations that I live with, that I work with. In most organizations where I work as a consultant, I see exactly that. I see devs fighting with security and ops fighting with architects. These silos, they aren't the past. In most companies, they are the present. They are the things with which people in large organizations still struggle with. If we take a look at this situation from the viewpoint of classical security, what they want to do is they want to protect the company. They put up road closed signs like this to protect the developers, the users from things like that, for instance. This is typical. This is the viewpoint of security. But if we take a look at the viewpoint of a developer, for instance, they see it completely different. They are in different silo. They don't see the danger here. They just see the beautiful green grass, and they just see administrators and security professionals from preventing them to go on to this beautiful world of green grass. And we have fights going on all the time. We have kingdoms. We have people who live in kingdoms. For instance, this fictitious developer, he cares about building web apps, and he doesn't really care about operational stuff. He doesn't really care about reverse proxies, firewalls, telemetry, autoscaling, because he just wants to write code. And then things like that happen. The security guys know that, and they want to prevent things like that to happen. But on the other hand, the security guys, they have their fiefdoms too. Their fiefdom might be Active Directory, and they are super restrictive on that because they are the only ones who can really master that. They do it because they want to protect their colleagues, for instance. But what's going to happen? This is going to happen. If you lock everything down, people will find ways around it. And again, we have struggle, we have fights going on between the silos, so that can't be really the solution. The fundamental solution from my point of view is a point of missing trust. The different silos see each other a little bit like that. Everybody needs to protect the other ones because they have no idea about what they are really doing. That's one of the fundamental problems here. Additionally, if we face reality, the world around us is getting more and more complicated. Let me quickly make my video here a little bit smaller so you see everything. When I started with Azure, typical applications in the cloud looked a little bit like that. Very, very simple. Some databases, some PaaS services, a little bit of storage, and that's it. But over time, these applications became more complex. And nowadays you are talking about a gazillion virtual networks, firewalls, proxies, databases, asynchronous communication stuff, NoSQL databases, SQL databases, talking to each other. And the problem is that the silos, it's not just a root cause for fights because of misunderstandings. It's also a root cause of problems because our environments became so complicated that a single person or a single team who just lives in one silo cannot overlook everything. That's really a big problem. And this is just the landscape from the Cloud Native Foundation. You probably know this poster. The world has become so complicated and so complex that we need a different approach. It's no longer possible to live in these silos and to work in these silos. So the second question that I would like to target before I move towards the solution part, we are still in the what's the problem part, is the topic of zero trust. Because what I see, many organizations who go towards cloud and cloud native and public cloud, when I come in and tell them something about zero trust, and when I question their native tendency towards virtual networks and lots of firewalls and just ask them to do zero trust, I'm seeing also a lot of problems here. Which kind of problems? The problem is perimeter security. These organizations over years and decades have learned to build large walls around their enterprises. This is what their network look like. They have large fences, walls, and water gates around their company, and the internet is seen, the internet is seen as the root of all evil. It's dangerous. Inside, we are good friends. Everything is cozy. Everything is fine, but the internet is bad. That's a problem. That's a problem. We have hard rules outside and soft or no rules inside. But is that really true? Can we nowadays, in large organizations with thousands, tens of thousands of employees, really assume that our corporate network is secure, securer than the internet? And we have an additional problem going on here, because nowadays, the end users, also the developers who live inside of these corp nets, they see beautiful things out there in the internet. They see these unicorns out in the internet. Like in my world, a lot of people love to use Power BI, for instance. Power BI is a software as a service offering. The business users would like to use it, but they really have a problem. They have a hard time because Power BI cannot access the data sources locked into the corporate network and hidden behind some large enterprise firewalls. Additionally, the coronavirus, they also brought additional problems because people started to work from home. They are not inside the corporate network, but they need to access resources which live on the corporate network. So this point of view of building perimeter network security, only perimeter network security, is kind of out of date and is a problem nowadays. I've summarized some important points that I told you here, so I can skip this slide. Now, how can we solve that? Let's move on to the part where we talk about solving and how can organizations be successful, in my point of view, when they want to transition towards a cloud native world, where they talk about zero trust, where they talk about DevOps, where they go away from all these silos towards autonomous teams. Now we are nearly in the world of solutions. Everybody here in this meetup probably knows what DevOps is, and DevOps is really important. You build it, you run it is the mantra in the world of DevOps. If I take a look at large organizations that I work with, believe it or not, they have not all embraced the concept of DevOps. They still struggle with this mantra of you build it, you run it. They want to go to the cloud, but they have not even learned and embraced the basic principles of DevOps. And if I now come in and say, hey, not just DevOps, DevSecOps, you're not just responsible for building the system, for running the system, you're also responsible for its security. This is what I typically hear. what? Of course, anything else? I'm not bored the whole day. I'm overflooded with work. I can't do everything. I'm an admin or security guy or developer. I can't do everything. The second thing, if I come in and tell them about moving away from perimeter security towards zero trust networking, I typically get something like this as a response. So the point that I would like to make here is that these companies, they need help. And the help comes with these success factors that I'm going to talk about now. The most important point that should help us in becoming successful in a cloud-native world with security is to accept that security is no longer the responsibility of a specialized, isolated team. But security is a shared responsibility not for single persons. And that is my first solution for those guys in the audience who say, I cannot move towards this world because I already am overflooded with work. It's not the responsibility of a single person. It's a team effort. The entire team, not just the security experts, have to take responsibility for the entire software solution. I told you that modern cloud applications are so complicated, consist of so many moving parts. Think of event-driven computing, things like that, that only the teams who build those solutions really have the overall picture. And only this overall picture can lead to better security, better service level agreements, and things like that. The second important thing is that DevSecOps is organizations who want to embrace DevSecOps need to accept that DevSecOps isn't a project. It isn't it's not a product. This is what I wanted to say. It's not a technology. It's not a tool you can build. DevSecOps means that we have to change the culture of a company. Just saying security is a shared responsibility changes nothing. The company culture has to change and organizational stuff has to change. And a company, an organization that is very much oriented in this classical silo way of doing things will produce software and an organization and will use cloud in a way that is also reflecting their organizational principle. That's not a new thing. That was already known in the 1960s when a guy named Conway stated this law. Any organization that designs a system will inevitably produce a design whose structure is a copy of the organization's communication structure. And I believe that to be very, very true when it comes to cloud-native projects. Companies who move towards the cloud need to change their organizational structure, their processes, their communication structure in order to master the cloud. Just taking a look at technology isn't enough. It's also important that we need to keep in mind that when we talk about security in a cloud-native world, the organization has to accept that they have to deal with fears. People are fearing from losing power and influence. Giving up those fiefdoms that I talked about, those kingdoms, is really fearful. The people who should take responsibility, they are sometimes afraid of taking ownership because in the company culture, maybe a deep fear of failure is there. Maybe they are lacking abilities. Maybe they have too many responsibilities. They are in fear of overwhelming responsibilities. From a management perspective, I often see that management is in fear of losing control. In the classical world, with all these silos were driven by very strict policies. And now, with autonomous teams who are responsible not only for building the system, but also for running it and securing it, that means that we have to allow a certain level of decentralization. And this needs to be built on trust. And in classical organizations, which are built very hierarchical in these silos that I mentioned multiple times now, that is really a big issue. So dealing with fears means we have to work on company culture. Now, let me give you a few success factors that I found very useful when working with customers on their journey towards cloud and cloud security. The first one, and the most important one, is that this is really, really hard to build from the ground up. We have to have, in organizations, we have to have a certain amount of management support. I would say a good and solid management support. Management needs to understand the overall goals of DevOps, of DevSecOps, of autonomous teams, of cloud computing. They need to stand behind the changes in the organizational structure, in the communication structure, and things like that. And they also have to accept limits. The teams, for instance, I have many customers who say to their teams, yes, do DevOps, do DevSecOps, do cloud native security, introduce Kubernetes, build everything on containers. But by the way, you are not allowed to use any public cloud. We will still keep all our policies with firewalls and so on in place. Why can't you do that? That doesn't work. We need to accept limits. If the teams are responsible for security, we have to give them the correct tools. And believe me, the 10x developer myth, which you can a lot read on the internet, I don't like this 10x developer myth. It doesn't work. Firing all the decade-long employees with lots of experience and hire just the new guys who have learned to live and embrace the cloud world, it doesn't work, okay? So, and management has to accept the limits and have to give the teams the proper tools. Simplify is the next success factor, which I would like to emphasize here. Simplify means that organizations have to accept that they can't build everything from scratch, especially here in Europe, especially here in Western Europe. We have a deep-rooted mistrust to the cloud, at least in the companies I work with. Many of those companies, they mistrust mainly US companies who run the big clouds, and they don't allow the teams to go into the cloud. They have heard about this thing, Kubernetes, so they want to run everything on premise and things like that. That is really hard. By embracing public cloud providers, especially medium-sized or not the world-leading enterprises, but larger enterprises on a, let's say, Austrian or German scale, it's sometimes necessary to surrender some amount of control and to use professional cloud providers and let them do what they do best. With that, we can free valuable resources and put those valuable resources into the new challenges that come up when we live in the cloud native world and we have to deal with security and zero trust and things like that. Also, moving from an infrastructure as a service approach towards a platform as a service and serverless approach. Avoiding over-engineering by, for instance, embracing zero trust networking and avoiding overcomplicated network structures which made sense in a world of perimeter security, but which we don't need anymore in a public cloud world. Those simplifications can help a lot to become successful when going in the cloud native way and still trying to be secure and successful in traditional organizations. The next thing, which is super important, is education. Education is crucial when an existing corporation who today works in the classical silo on-prem perimeter security world and wants to go towards the cloud. It's not enough to just teach the new things like clouds and cloud frameworks. It's also super important to repeat the basics. You know what? Approximately 13 years ago, I started using Microsoft Azure Cloud heavily. And at that time, I was a professional developer for, let's say, 15 years, something like this. So I really had a lot of experience and I knew my stuff, I think. But when I moved towards the cloud and I simply became responsible for securing my own cloud native applications, I had to go back to my study books and repeat things like networking basics, encryption basics, because suddenly I, as a developer, had security responsibilities that I didn't have in the traditional world of security, because I had a lot of firewalls out there and there were people who focused on that. In an autonomous team, building a cloud native solution, In a DevSecOps world where I am responsible for building, or my team is responsible for building, running, and securing things, I have to understand what a reverse proxy is. I have to understand how firewalls work. These are basics, but in traditional organizations who transition towards the cloud, we must not forget when we educate our teams that we have to repeat these things, because maybe some of the developers have forgotten about these things. Maybe they've heard them in their time at university, but we have to refresh this knowledge. It's also important to foster knowledge transfer before teams. In many organizations, there are some teams who spearhead the public cloud or cloud native movement inside the organization. And it's super crucial to take this knowledge that some of these teams acquired and bring this knowledge to other teams. So this is something where management and HR, and if there is one, an education department, has really placed a focus on to build, for instance, let's say a company internal meetups or cohorts, or people who meet together and do knowledge transfer. The important thing here is that well-educated people are able and willing to take ownership and responsibility. And what did I say? Security is not something for specialists in the cloud world. Security is a shared responsibility. And I have, as a team member, I have to accept, and I have to be willing to take ownership and responsibility. And education is the enabler for that. For me, this picture of T-shaped skills is really important. Successful people in cloud native organizations, they have this deep expertise in a single field where they know a lot about it. They are considered experts in this field, and they help their peers if they have questions in this field. But they also have the ability to collaborate with other people from other disciplines and apply this knowledge to other areas of expertise or to their current work. So they have a broad overview knowledge and a deep expertise in one area. And by fostering teamwork, a lot of these T-shaped people with T-shaped skills can be successful together as teams. The last one is an important one, which existing companies a lot of times forget: to value stability and success, long-term stability and success. People who were able to build and operate legacy software for a long time in the traditional non-cloud native world, they have shown that they are willing and able to take responsibility, that they have development, operational, and security skills. And we should not let these skills go. I see too many companies who forget that legacy and long-term stability is a skill which cannot be acquired easily. It's a mental state that those people are in. So we have to redefine legacy. Legacy is not old. It's not something that people have to apologize for. It's something that we have to value, and we have to bring people who have decades of knowledge in a non-cloud native world into cloud native teams, because they have the right mindset to build cloud native solutions, which are not just shiny and new, but also have a long-term value for the company. Okay, we have approximately 10 minutes left. That's fine. Next one. Support. Teams who build cloud native solutions need support. Therefore, a company who wants to go down that road needs to care for internal or external consulting teams. There have to be people who these self-organizing autonomous teams must be able to ask when they have questions, and they will have questions. They will have questions after the first trainings. They will need somebody whom they can bring into their project for a certain amount of time, and who works with them to solve really hard problems. It's also useful to build a collection of blueprints, a collection of patterns and practices for typical problems which teams in an organization are often faced with. And finally, although we have blueprints and consultants, autonomy must be a big value. So if the team decides that it wants to deviate from the typical blueprint inside an organization, it should be allowed to do so. And the consultants, again, should help them overcome any problem, because maybe the new way will become the new blueprint of the future. Infrastructure as code in that context is super important from my point of view, because having infrastructure as code makes patterns, practices, and blueprints repeatable, shareable. We can do code reviews on it. We can ask consultants for their opinions, and custodians can verify the correctness and things like that. So embracing infrastructure as code is a super important skill that companies who just start with their cloud native journey definitely have to take a look at. Finally, oh, I have a typo here. Sorry, it should say style here. Open source development style is a great teacher for companies who go into the cloud native world when it comes to autonomous teams and autonomous team security. Open source development means taking responsibility of a distributed team, and we can learn so many things from this open source community and open source style of development. It works perfectly fine internally too, especially in large organizations. Unfortunately, in large organizations, I often see that, and I come from this silo thinking, I often see Conway's law really manifesting itself, because the teams have very strict security rules. They don't share code, they don't share knowledge, because they are afraid that somebody could point the finger that they are doing something wrong or something like this. This is the wrong way of thinking. And again, we need to have management support to change that. We have to work on the change in culture here. The step-by-step approach is an important one. I will make it short. Iterative improvements always outdo perfectionism. So accept that going towards cloud native and building a cloud native security practice isn't something that you will make correct on the first day. It is a long journey. It is an everlasting journey. It is an endless walk and journey, and not a state of perfection that we want to reach at day one. That doesn't work. And finally, custodians, those people who have to make sure that those rules that cannot be ignored are followed. They have to change their approach. They are not the top-down management custodians anymore. They have to practice servant leadership. They have to make suggestions. They have to listen to the teams, because these teams, they know their problems. They know their functionality, and they know their architecture. They just don't say no, they listen and try to find solutions together with the teams. I also find it very useful when we talk about cloud native that those people start to automate policy checks. They establish automated processes, for instance, where the public cloud provider or the cloud environment offers a lot of checks and practices and guidelines, where they automatically get from a nice little software robot, get a hint or a tip that they did something wrong, so they can learn by getting those tips. Hey, you turned on the wrong TLS version on your Azure Blob Storage. This is something that could come from a software robot. Custodians don't need to do that manually. The processes should be in place that people learn from that. Custodians are there to point people, or to make sure that those rules are really enforced, that must be enforced because of legal practices, for instance. Last topic. Professional clouds environments are super important when it comes to cloud native security because of this topic of zero trust. Zero trust means that we forget about perimeter security and we make the internet our corpnet, our corporate network. This only works when we follow 3 basic rules. First rule, authenticate everything, users and devices. Encrypt everything correctly and strong. And finally, log everything. Logging, monitoring, and telemetry is key, because it is not a question if there will be an intruder. It's only the question, when will we have an intruder? And we want to be prepared for that situation. We want to have logs, monitoring, telemetry to detect intruders and to find out what they are doing or what they did inside of our network. Now, this is pretty hard. This is pretty hard without a cloud. When I go to large companies who want to go towards cloud native and still be secure, and I tell them about zero trust, they typically say, no, that's not possible. We are not capable of doing these 3 rules really professionally. And this is why I think that for many organizations who are not the largest enterprises on earth, public clouds and public cloud providers are inevitable. They cannot be avoided. I want to make some examples from Azure. Azure offers more and more so many platform as a service and serverless offerings. It doesn't make sense to still stick at with infrastructure as service and patching base software infrastructure and so on and so on. The Anglo-Americans often say standing on the shoulders of giants, and this is what I mean here. By using a public cloud provider like Azure, I can free valuable resources so that I can focus on the important things like, can remember, authenticate everything, encrypt everything, log everything. I can focus on these things by getting rid of toil. I don't want to do the things which can be automated. And the cloud providers, guess what? They already have automated it. So using a professional cloud provider, maybe a public cloud provider, is a very important thing here for many mid-size or larger, but not world-class enterprises. Next one, encryption. Encryption done manually typically fails. So what I want to have of a cloud environment where I am on, and if I need, for instance, a certificate, I just want to have a box that I can check, and the public cloud environment should care for everything without me doing anything. Azure, for instance, has free managed certificates for any kind of web application. It's just a click and we are done. I have my certificate, it's automatically renewed, I cannot make a mistake, and it works, it's secure. Also, Key Vault. Key Vault is a vault for secrets, for certificates and secrets like connection strings, API keys, and so on. If I put my stuff in there, it's just secure. And if I combine it with managed identity, it's even more secure. Azure Active Directory, in the case of Azure, is the central identity system. Building identity systems from scratch on your own is something which you don't want to do if you are not in that business. You want to have something which is robust, which is used by hundreds of millions of users every single day, every single minute. And Azure Active Directory is one of the systems here. I see so many customers who don't want to go into the public cloud and use Azure Active Directory because they can take this small little software from the internet. It's an open source project and we can just run our own identity system and it's good. We care for our own PKI infrastructure. Everything is fine. It's not. It's really not. It's really hard to run things like that. Such customers often have really professional data centers. They really did a great job in avoiding single point of failures on a hardware or network level. And then they come in and build semi or unprofessional identity systems. And suddenly they have the most vulnerable single point of failure on earth. And by using professional identity systems, like in the case of Azure Active Directory, we can avoid those pitfalls. Private endpoints, generally networking. In the public cloud infrastructures, there are so many powerful network concepts. Having a reverse proxy, having an API management system, having professional firewalls, doing DNS, doing connections between platform as a service offerings and virtual networks and VPNs and things like that. Those components are already made. I told you at the beginning of my talk that teams are responsible for building solutions, running solutions, and securing solutions. And by using ready-made network components, they can fulfill this demand. They can really secure the solution, although they are also responsible for building and running it. And finally, logging, monitoring, and telemetry, things like application insights, or if you want to go for the world's best provider in this area, Dynatrace, for instance, they also work very well with Azure. Use an existing system for logging, monitoring, and telemetry, because it's not just gathering the logs. It's not enough to gather logs, to gather security warnings. It's also important that you analyze this stuff. And those systems, they have AI built in and things like that. Time is running and I'm already out of time, but it always is a good thing if the end of time of a talk comes together with the end of content. And with that, we are already in the summary slide. And I am looking forward to open it up after this summary slide for some questions. Let me summarize the most important points that I would like you to take away from this talk. DevOps and DevSecOps, this breaking of silos, is super important if you want to go towards a cloud-native, secure cloud-native practice. That's super, super important for becoming more productive, for mastering complexity, and for building real solutions for real people, and not just for spinning up a professional Kubernetes cluster and wasting all your precious resources in building infrastructure instead of building value for the end users and customers. To achieve that, to achieve this DevOps and DevSecOps practice, it's super important to work not just on technology, but also on the organization. Ask yourself, how much time do we spend on technology decisions compared to how much time do we spend to work on our organization, on our culture regarding DevOps and DevSecOps? Most companies that I work with, they spend lots of time for technology decision, for embracing tools, and they spend way too less time thinking about reorgs, changing of culture, building strong autonomous teams. And finally, see cloud computing not as danger. Don't fear cloud computing. Don't be afraid of losing your kingdom or fiefdom. Cloud computing is an enabler. It allows us to focus on our core responsibility. And this core responsibility is building software, operating software, and securing software as a team, as a focused team that is organized based on the principle of bounded context. With that, I say thank you. I have made all my points. I am through. I'm sorry. I think I have 3 minutes over time, something like this. I hope that's okay. And with that, I would say, shoot your questions. Let's open the mic, ask questions. Let's discuss the points that I made, or let's discuss any topic that you're interested in. Again, thank you very much for having me. And it was a blast. Thank you.
Thanks, Rainer. Really great. A lot of content to digest. I'm really happy that we're also recording this, since I think a couple of us have to watch it again to really get all this all those content in and to suck up all this content. Thanks a lot for sharing this. I want to start with one question, and then we will also open up, because but this one question I made a note, and maybe you mentioned it somewhere in your talk as well. But for me, I'm also kind of a developer, or I like to write code. The problem always is security is not a feature. So it's not that I can be proud of that that my app is now more secure. I cannot really show it to someone. It's not that, because it was not, it was not that obvious that it was not secure before. So now it's more secure. But how would you convince someone to actually say, okay, security has to be a feature. It has to be also shown to someone, kind of to celebrate the success, what you now have built when it comes to security in your applications or infrastructure?
Two things I would like to answer to this question. First, yes, you are really asking the right question here. I also have this problem, and I see this problem. I see many companies struggle with that. So two things here. First one, I think the key, again, is to make security a task for each autonomous team. So security isn't something that a chief information security officer is responsible for. It is a task for the team. And members of the team are responsible for requirements engineering. Members of the team are responsible for designing the software, for implementing the software, for running the software. There is nobody or only a very limited amount of people who do security outside of the team. So we have to make it clear on a cultural level for every team that there is nobody caring for security but them. It has to be part of the backlog. And if I am in a management position or in a consulting position, I'm often acting as a consultant inside of companies. I often am in backlog meetings and sprint meetings, and I always ask, hey, on this backlog, where is the technical debt? How many sprint points do you invest in security in this sprint? If they don't, something is wrong. So security has to become a natural, it has to become a feature, as you put it. This is the first one. And I forgot the second one. Maybe I wanted to make a second point, but I just forgot it. But yeah, do you understand what I mean? Do you agree or do you disagree?
I agree. I was just interested in your opinions on this and how to kind of convince someone that says, yeah, but it's the feature is more important. There are so many features in the backlog. I have to work on the feature. We have to ship a new version of our application.
Yeah, and if you make
no, please go ahead.
If you make security a feature, it's part of your backlog. It's not less important or more important. It has to become, the mindset has to be changed so that security is a feature. Oh, now I can remember the second one. When the business users who don't care about security sometimes, let's say honest, okay? I'm a practitioner. I have met people who just think about features and they don't care about security. Give them a book to read. For me, a mind-changing book was Black Swan. If you don't know it, it's really a recommendation from my side. Nicholas Taleb, Black Swan. Security is a Black Swan event. The costs of a lack of security, you can't see the costs of a lack of security a long time. But when it hits you, the costs are enormous, and the organization could even die from it. So the management team has to understand that security must be a feature, not because they have to pay a certain amount of money each month if they don't care about security, but they could hit a Black Swan event that could put the project in danger, the product in danger, the whole company in danger, especially in a world of software as a service, where trust of the end customers is one of the most important values that software as a service companies have to be conscious with.
Thank you.
Awesome.
I'm opening up to the questions. If there are any more questions, I know that we had some folks that had to leave early. There was actually, I have to find it in the chat because it was only sent to me, unfortunately. We had one chat message earlier. Great talk. Unfortunately, I have another work obligation and have to leave. This was from Scott, sent earlier.
Awesome, love it.
And are there any more questions? Otherwise, I think we're already hitting the top of the hour. Giuliano, anything from your end?
Yeah, no, just would like to thank Reina for the talk. It was super nice. And the thing that you brought, like the DevSecOps as a culture, is what we had before with DevOps. And then now this new movement or this new trend, I totally agree. And I think it's a cultural thing. And yeah, I love it. The two talks were super nice. I really like it. Thanks, Reina. Thanks, Matt. Yeah, and Jürgen, I think we are good. If you have anything else to regarding the next event, we already have one speaker, so just register to subscribe to the meetup if you're not, and yeah, most probably next week we are already posting it, the event of April.
Yeah, thanks everyone for joining.
Thank you for having me. It was a blast.
Thanks, Rana. Thanks, Matt. Really great talks, and we will we will post the links to the slides on the meetup page. Matt, if you can just send us the link to the slides, it would be great. Rainer, you already posted it in Slack.
Yeah, the slides are online. You can take them from there, and I will send you my recording. I would say tomorrow morning, something like this.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Okay, then thanks everyone. Have a great rest of your day, and see you all next time. Bye.
See ya.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.